Welcome, everybody. It's so nice to be here. I appreciate being invited. It's a real honor to me to share this special time and talk about my integration of healthy living that really builds a lot on what you've already spoken to. A little background about me. I have an undergraduate degree in nutrition, always been interested in health. Early on I had sort of hypoglycemic kind of things, and I realized all I needed to do was eat right, and I feel better. It really was my medicine. Food was what really made the difference. I, at a pretty young age, inherited 7 children. I have 7 stepchildren, and have 2 biological children, so I raised 9 children. I, at a later time in my life, went back and got my master's in counseling psychology, and then just a few years ago, I became a doctor in clinical psychology. And in amongst that, I became a registered play therapist, worked a lot with children and families, and of course, a lot of that involves couple work, so I did a lot with working and making relationships healthier and deeper and richer. And my own personal therapy was to go salsa dancing on Thursday nights at Boomers. And that is truly what really feeds my soul and releases my energy and lets me go into a very peaceful, healing place. Because I do try to do a lot of the other things, the eating right, other forms of exercise, meditation, deep breathing. I taught prepared childbirth for 20 years, so a lot of that has to do with the breath and really working holistically with your body for a healthy bringing of babies into the world. So it was actually at one of these healing events for me at Rumors doing my salsa dancing that a woman literally kind of drugged me off the floor and insisted that I teach her and her friends to move like I was moving. And I must have really been letting my hair down that night because I had no idea what I was doing or what she was referring to, except that I just really go into this space, and it is extremely healing to me. And she didn't know I was a psychologist when she dragged me off the dance floor. She just knew she wanted a little bit of what I was drinking, which was the real essence of life in that natural high.
It was natural then. You wasn't drinking anything.
No. It's the best kind of intoxication there is. The essence of your own wonderment is what I was high on for sure. And I think we all have that. But it all really came together. It really sort of fell out of the universe into my lap, saying this is something that you really need to do. That was different than what I was doing before, which was sit down one-on-one therapy, really working deeply with people to help them heal. And she actually sent me a video that was called Exotic Dancing for Everyday Women. And as a therapist, I'm looking at this video and hearing these amazing stories about how it healed their world, their life. And it was really focusing around sensual movement. And I've studied women's history, women's evolution, human evolution, but really did focus a lot on women's needs and issues and where we've really got some gaps and places we need to heal. So it all came together to me. And my business I created with the help of my adult daughters is called Fit for a Goddess. And it really is based on the drawing from this ancient prehistory type of movement, which is thought to be the most ancient form of prayer. Ancient sensual movement to frame drums or basic drum beats, like I was sharing with you, is really where spirituality began. And it was mostly women that came together, and in my groups we call it sacred circles. They have for thousands of years called it that, where women gather and they move their bodies in these really circular, opening kinds of ways, and really connecting with the earth and each other and their bodies. And they really believed that this is what brought in fertility not only to their bodies, to the land. And it was very earth-based and very universally connected. And so I really brought this into the work that I do now. My eldest daughter actually helped me come up with the name because she knew about all the research and the background that I had done on all of this, and really moved my practice out of the therapy room, one-on-one, into large groups of women. I started it about 4 years ago now. My first group was my adult daughters, some of their girlfriends, some of my social workers at work. I think there was 8 of us, and it's like, come on, girlfriend, you got to help me. We're going to figure this out. We're going to do this new fun thing. And now I have over 3,500 students. I have about 37 teachers that I've trained that help me, and 3 locations, and over 40 classes a week, and we're just dancing as fast as we can.
What's the name of the dance?
Well, the name of my company is Fit for a Goddess, and it's actually on the front of the. It's ancient sacred sexual kind of sensual movement, and we also use dance poles, so pole dancing is included, and it's really good for your spine and your hips and a lot of the areas that women need to prevent some of the osteoporosis and things that happen.
Do you have information for where your places are?
On the back page with my bio is contact information, and I have cards and things that you can ask me about later. So yeah, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for the day, so you can ask me all about that. So part of what makes what I do very different from other kinds of approaches to this integration of this aspect of ourselves is that it is based on very ancient, sacred movement. It's not at all modern. And some of what I think helps is what I wanted you to have there in a handout. So you have this to refer to at home, but where I wanted to start in my little portion of today's wonderful event is to look at some of that early history, or what's actually considered prehistory. And what I find fascinating, and the people that I get into these conversations with find fascinating, is that history, as we know it, is actually his story, almost entirely. So if you really dive back to how that all took place, history technically began when men were allowed to write about what was going on. Women not only couldn't write it, they weren't even allowed to read it, let alone write it. They weren't the ones interpreting it. And so really the story that we have learned throughout history is actually his story. So to find her story, to reintegrate that and balance, half of humanity's story has been left out of the story. To rebalance that, we really have had to go back to prehistory and look at what was there prior to writing. And what was prior to writing was cave art, figurines, vases, where all of those artwork and other symbolic means were used to describe the world at that time. And the world at that time, prehistory, with all the evidence, and there's a plethora of it when you're looking for it, shows a lot more balance, a lot more peace, a lot more harmony, a lot more integration of the woman's energy and wisdom and intuition and all the things that women generally find easier than men. Not that men don't have those same things. And that's part of what I like to emphasize in my classes and outside my classes. It's about balancing those energies, not just in women, but in men, so that all of us are more aware that we have feminine energy, we have masculine energy. That's true for both men and women. Now, our energy has been so stifled and so left out and so ignored and so pressed down and twisted and all the things that have happened, that part of what I feel my journey is to maybe overemphasize it in a way to attempt to bring that balance back, because it really is all about balance. So part of the way we're coming to understand that is to really kind of put that out there. This is a whole side of the story that we haven't heard. And one of my favorite resources along those lines is this one. This is actually several editions old in terms of the cover. but it is mentioned in your handout there. The newest edition has got sort of a half red, half white cover, but the same symbol. And this book was actually written over 40 years ago now by Rianne Esler, and it's called The Chalice and the Blade. And it's an amazing scholarly work. The research that went into this work is just phenomenal. And she actually does a superb job of telling her story, if you want to try to bring some balance back to that. This book, by the way, was one of the primary resources for the Da Vinci Code. It was also in Eckhart Tolle's The New Earth. He refers to stuff that was drawn from this book. And one of the things he says, Eckhart Tolle says, is that had this female energy not been stifled when it was several thousand years ago, that we would definitely not be in the place that we are today. So I think it's really timely, it's overdue, for us to bring that feminine energy back into both men and women so that we can really reconnect with the earth, reconnect with our bodies and the universe in a more holistic way. And that's sort of what my journey seems to be. This is another really good resource if you're interested. It's called The Once and Future Goddess, and it does also kind of chronicle some of what I'm mentioning. And pretty much any book that has to do with balancing these kinds of energies will lead back to this first book that I mentioned. Did anybody have any questions?
Do they have that in video? If you don't like reading?
They do actually have an audio version of The Chalice and the Blade. Yes, I'm certain of that. Yes.
I don't like reading.
Yeah, and some people are much more auditory learners. So the other thing that I think is really fascinating when you start to understand sort of where this all came from and what brought us to the point where we are today is part of what happened in that shift and sort of the suppressing of the female energy was that we as women were really denied our sexuality. In fact, that was the main thing that shifted, is part of the way it became this more, as she refers to, the sort of dominator and control as opposed to the nurture and partnership kind of approach to the world. One of the best ways that that could occur was to suppress our sexuality. And there's different ways to understand that. But when you see, if you want to have power and control, most, even in local cultures, the indigenous cultures even here, but pretty much worldwide, indigenous cultures, usually the land passed through the mother's side of the family, the name passed through. So in order to control that, part of what they did was say, well, I can't prove that that baby's mine. Certainly you know that it's your baby. The mother always knows who's their baby. But in order for the men to have more power and control, it's like the way I can control that that's my baby is you will only have sex with me, and then I'll know it's my child. I mean, it gets kind of interesting and complicated, but it was really brought to the point where the issue was a woman's sexuality. And the best way to control that was through her sexuality. So it became underground and distorted and bad and all those sorts of things. So it's really kind of a fun exploration. But when we're looking at really loving our bodies and taking care of our bodies, and if we're eating well and sleeping well and not toxifying our bodies, what if our conditioning is such that we just deny our sexuality, we block it off, we stifle it, it's just all bottled up and it's dark and it's not okay? How does that affect our flow and our chi and our energy and our ability to connect all of who we are if that part of us is denied? And so I think this is hopefully a valuable thing for both men and women to get a better understanding is how do I need to nurture and reintegrate that part of myself? And as a man, how do I need to develop my feminine, nurturing, caregiving, connected kind of energies? How do I support her in doing that? How do I as a woman support a man developing their feminine attributes so that we have this more balanced connection as people? And it rolls out in all sorts of ways. And a lot of it is how we communicate about all these things that are maybe things that we weren't supposed to talk about or think about, let alone express or do. So a lot of it does boil down to the way we communicate about it. And how I see some of those things roll out, and how I saw it when I was doing my therapeutic work with couples. And there's sort of, three things that bring couples to therapy. It's either sex, money, or power, or the relationship of those three things, or how they're communicating about all those things. And then the other thing that you see is just how it's sort of been in our culture, the way it sort of manifests, and the way energetically we kind of relate to one another, and how we can do things, important things, to shift that. One of the fun, I like to get silly like you do, just because it's a fun way to express things and hopefully hits home or goes deeper sometimes. But some of the ways that's rolled out in sort of our current culture, if we're talking about sexuality and how it is, if you embrace it at all in your womanhood at this point, is as women, we really need to be in the mood, right? And the way I understand it more often than not just personally, although that's changed recently, but through couple work, is men just need to be in the room. We need to be in the mood. You just need to be in the room. That's enough. But for us, the other way I like to explain it is...
How often a day does that mood occur?
It's different for everybody. And some of those, again, in our society, the other way I see it is we are more like ovens. It takes us a while to kind of warm up. And men are more like microwaves. And so, like microwaves. We're like ovens. Men, I'm being silly partly for generalizations. She's like, yes, okay, so then, if we know this, or this is typical, maybe not in your personal relationship, but if this is kind of what we're working with or really wanting to alter, what do we need to do differently? Part of what I do is dance. That gets me in the mood. Those kinds of dances, those kinds of musics really gets my fluids flowing, gets my chakras connected, gets me all nice and warmed up, so that we are going to have a chance of connecting in a more fun, more equal, more balanced kind of way. And that's part of what my work with women has allowed them to do, is to, first of all, say, this is okay. Like you were saying, it's your birthright to own your sexuality. Don't let anybody tell you that that is not an integral, vital part of you being a complete, whole, wonderful, fulfilled human being. It's huge. It's as important as any other aspect of yourself. And if you deny it, if you shelve it, you're going to be less healthy than if you embrace it. Very valuable, wonderful thing.